Nobody in the neighborhood knew her real name. To them, she was just La Niña Mendiga, the little beggar girl who sat outside the iron gates of the grand houses near the private sports club, her small hands stretched forward, her eyes too old for her fragile face. She couldn't have been more than 10. Her clothes were faded and torn, her sandals barely holding together with bits of string. Yet every afternoon she appeared in the same corner, silent and watchful. The wealthy families passed her without seeing her. Luxury cars rolled by, windows tinted, air conditioning sealing off the world. And behind those gates was the place she would stare at for hours, a shimmering blue swimming pool that sparkled like another universe. She had never been inside. She had never touched water that clean. But she watched, she listened, and she learned, because every day, as rich children laughed and splashed, she memorized the lifeguard's movements, the way he dove, the way he turned a body, the way he lifted a drowning swimmer. She watched so closely that sometimes she moved her hands in the air, copying the techniques as if practicing with invisible water. No one noticed. No one cared. Until that afternoon. The sun was ruthless, the sky clear, and the pool area crowded with parents and children celebrating a birthday. Balloons floated near the tables, music played loudly, and laughter echoed against the tiled walls. Among the guests was a boy in a wheelchair, about 8 years old, thin but smiling brightly. His name was Mateo. A recent accident had left him paralyzed from the waist down, and though he tried to hide it, he hated feeling different. He loved water more than anything. But since the accident, he was always kept at the edge, watching, never participating. His mother hovered protectively behind him, her eyes filled with both love and fear. The party grew louder. Adults became distracted with drinks and conversation. The lifeguard stepped away briefly to answer a call. And in that single fragile moment, everything changed. A group of boys playing tag accidentally collided with Mateo's wheelchair. It rolled backward faster than anyone expected. There was a scream. Wheels hit the slick tile, and before anyone could grab him, the chair tipped over the edge. Mateo plunged into the deep end of the pool, sinking instantly, his body unable to fight, unable to kick, unable to rise. For a split second, there was silence. Then chaos exploded. His mother shrieked his name. Guests rushed to the edge, but fear glued their feet in place. Some couldn't swim, others froze. The lifeguard was nowhere in sight. Beneath the surface, Mateo's eyes were open, wide with terror, bubbles escaping his mouth as he descended helplessly. And outside the gate, the Niña Mendiga saw it all. She didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She ran. Security shouted at her. But she slipped through the half-open service entrance like a gust of wind. Her heart pounded, but her movements were certain. She had studied this pool for months. She knew its depth. She knew the angle. She kicked off her broken sandals, mid-run, and launched herself into the water with a clean, fearless dive that stunned everyone watching. The splash cut through the screams. Underwater, she opened her eyes despite the sting of chlorine. She spotted Mateo sinking, his small body drifting deeper. She swam with fierce determination, arms slicing through water she had never touched before but somehow understood. Reaching him, she wrapped one arm across his chest exactly the way she had seen the lifeguard do countless times. She turned her body sideways for leverage and kicked upward with everything she had. It was harder than she imagined. He was heavier than air. Her lungs began to burn, but she refused to let go. With a final desperate push, they broke the surface. The crowd gasped as she shouted, "Ayúdenme!" 2 men finally snapped out of their paralysis and leaned down, pulling Mateo from her grasp and lifting him onto the deck. She climbed out seconds later, coughing but standing tall, water dripping from her tangled hair. Mateo was unconscious. His mother sobbed uncontrollably. The girl dropped to her knees beside him and began pressing on his chest, the way she had seen in her silent lessons from beyond the gate. Once, twice, 3 times. She tilted his head back carefully and breathed into his mouth. The adult stared in disbelief. Who was this child? Where had she learned this? After what felt like an eternity, Mateo coughed violently, water spilling from his lips. He inhaled sharply. The entire pool area erupted into stunned silence, then cries of relief. His mother collapsed over him, shaking. And in the middle of it all, the Niña Mendiga sat back on her heels, exhausted, trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of what had almost been lost. No one called her a beggar anymore. They were looking at her as if seeing her for the first time. And they had no idea. This was only the beginning. News travels fast when it carries a miracle. By evening, the story of the mysterious homeless girl who saved a paralyzed boy had spread across the neighborhood and beyond. Phones buzzed with recorded videos of her dive. Parents who had ignored her for months now whispered her bravery with awe. But she wasn't thinking about fame. She was sitting once again outside the gate, barefoot, hugging her knees, unsure if she would be chased away for trespassing. She expected anger. Instead, the gate opened slowly. Mateo's mother stepped out, her eyes red from crying but her posture steady. She walked toward the girl with something unfamiliar in her gaze, gratitude, without superiority. ¿Cómo te llamas? She asked softly. The girl hesitated before answering, Lucia. It was the first time anyone there had asked. The woman knelt down, not caring about the pavement against her expensive clothes, and wrapped Lucia in a tight embrace. It was awkward at first. Lucia wasn't used to being held, but then she melted into it, confused by the warmth. Over the next days, everything shifted. Mateo wouldn't stop talking about her. He insisted she visit him. At first, Lucia refused, ashamed of her appearance. But Mateo's mother returned with clean clothes and an invitation. Inside the house, Lucia felt like she had stepped into another planet. Polished floors, framed photos, soft furniture. She almost turned back. But then she heard Mateo's laugh from the living room and followed it. He greeted her like a hero, not like a charity case. They talked for hours. He learned she used to attend school before her father died and her mother fell ill. She learned that Mateo missed playing soccer more than anything in the world. Something powerful formed between them, not pity but partnership. Weeks passed. Mateo began physical therapy again, this time with renewed determination, and Lucia was there during sessions, cheering louder than anyone. One afternoon, as Mateo struggled to move his leg even a fraction, he looked at her and said, "If you weren't afraid to jump into a pool you'd never touched." "I'm not afraid to try again." Those words changed more than just his therapy. Mateo's parents made a decision that surprised even themselves. They offered to sponsor Lucia's education, not as repayment, but as recognition of her courage and intelligence. At first she resisted, fearing it was temporary kindness that would disappear. But they insisted. She returned to school. She studied fiercely, especially science and sports medicine. Inspired by the day, she saved a life with knowledge gathered from observation alone. Meanwhile, Mateo's progress, though slow, became undeniable. Sensation began returning to his legs in faint sparks. Doctors were cautious but hopeful. Months later, during a small family gathering by that same pool, Mateo asked to stand in the water with support. The air felt heavy with anticipation. Lucia stood beside him just in case. With braces and assistance, he pushed downward. His legs trembled violently. For a moment, it seemed impossible. Then, he held himself upright for 3 seconds. 3 fragile, glorious seconds. His mother cried openly. His father covered his mouth in disbelief. And Lucia? She smiled quietly, remembering bubbles rising in blue water and a choice made in a heartbeat. The story that began with a beggar girl and a drowning boy became something far greater. It became a story about seeing potential where others see invisibility, about courage that ignores social barriers, about how one fearless act can ripple outward, transforming not just a life saved, but lives connected to it. Years later, Lucia would train as a certified aquatic rescue specialist, dedicating her career to teaching water safety to underprivileged children, because she never forgot what it felt like to watch from outside the gate. And Mateo would walk short distances with assistance, defying early medical predictions always, saying that the first step toward recovery happened the day someone believed he was worth diving for. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that heroes can come from the most unexpected places, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and join a community that believes in powerful, life-changing stories. Because sometimes all it takes to change everything is one brave leap.